Welcome to Tommy Threads, where the stories are real and the voice is human. In this video, a visit to the splash pad turns tense when two parents disagree over a child's toy, and it quickly becomes something much more uncomfortable. Post 1. Our first pose is from Enormous Radio. Mom feels entitled to my daughter's toy at the splash pad because her son has autism. Since last year, I've been taking my 4-year-old daughter to the local splash pad to help her feel more comfortable with water and playing with other kids. She has ADHD and sensory deficits, and going to the splash pad has been great for her socially and emotionally. Most parents at the splash pad bring their own water buckets, squirters, and other toys, usually just stuff from the dollar store. My daughter shares her toys regularly with other kids, and in turn, they share their stuff and play together. It's always been such a positive environment, and the parents usually step in to help guide turn-taking and create healthy social interactions. I've even made friends and scheduled playdates from it. But this afternoon, I had a really bad experience. Over the weekend, my daughter crashed in her Good Job marbles for a Paw Patrol beach bucket with Sky on it, and she couldn't wait to bring it to the splash pad. So today, we brought the bucket, along with our beach duffel that had our other toys, snacks, and towels. My daughter's filling her bucket at the splash pad when I notice a boy, maybe 5 or 6, grab the bucket and take it over to his siblings across the pad. My daughter runs to me, upset. At first I figure maybe the boy doesn't realize it belongs to her. Maybe he thinks it came with the park. So I walk over with my daughter, hoping to make it a positive interaction. I ask if they can play together since it's her bucket, so she doesn't feel like something she owns is being taken away, and he doesn't feel embarrassed. Win-win, right? Wrong. When my daughter asks to play with her bucket, the boy screams and throws it back at her and runs away. Well, that didn't go like I planned. Well, we got the bucket back, and my daughter went on to play with other kids for another 30 minutes, or so, before needing to use the restroom. Before we left, she carefully put all her toys back in our bag and zipped it up. We didn't leave anything lying around. When we came back from the restroom, our bag was not on the towel where I left it. Instead, I find it dumped out on the other side of the splash pad, snacks and all. That same boy and his siblings were playing with all of our toys, and yup, he was prancing around with a Sky bucket again. I felt so ticked off. It really felt like he had waited for an opportunity to swipe it, and the fact that he had to unzip our bag to get it, that felt invasive. My first thought was, where the heck are the parents? No one seemed to be watching at all. I was ready to leave, so I calmly went over to the kids and said, "Hey guys, can we please put those toys away? They belong to us and we're about to leave. We need to ask before taking things." The siblings listened and started putting things back. But my daughter tries to get her bucket from the boy's hands and he yells, "No, it's mine, my bucket!" I gently say, "It's her bucket, buddy, and we're leaving. She needs it back." He takes off running again. At that point, I run after him and pry his fingers off the bucket. He had a death grip on it, and I handed it back to my daughter. That's when he completely melts down. Cue Mom. She finally appears with one of the siblings, and she is pissed. She tells me not to touch her child. I try to explain the situation, but she's not even remotely sympathetic. She says, "The bucket's probably a freaking dollar, get over yourself." And honestly, I do start to feel bad at this point. The poor boy is now face first on the splash pad floor, banging his head into the foam and clearly highly dysregulated. But here's the thing, that bucket was something my daughter earned through positive behavior. She had worked hard for it. It was symbolic of the progress she's made. And I felt like it would have been a terrible message about boundaries to just give it away because someone else was crying. I told the mom, "I can't give it away, it belongs to her." And I walked over to gather the rest of our things. The mom was struggling to calm her son down and suddenly yells across the splash pad, "This is why you don't bring toys to the splash pad if you don't share them with others." Then I hear her trying to get another random mom involved saying, "He's autistic, he doesn't know better." Can you believe it? And now he's a mess. Ridiculous. All over a dollar store bucket they won't let him use. Why even bring it if they don't want it being used? It was so embarrassing. When I got in my car, I just cried. I've been having this back and forth internal conflict ever since. Felt like a total a-hole because I did take the bucket out of his hands, and I do know how hard autistic meltdowns can be. This child clearly had no impulse control over regulation skills yet, but on the other hand, I'm neurodivergent too. So is my daughter, and I've worked hard to build these boundaries and emotional tools with her. That bucket, it meant something to us. Well, lady, it's not just a bucket. I'd like you to remind you a whole war was started over a bucket, and it wasn't because of the material value of it being a bucket. You're right, it has symbolic value. That bucket is a symbol that your child is growing, developing. She earned something. and someone just wants to take that away from you, the first 7 years of your childhood are going to be very formative for you, and this is going to leave a lasting impression. It's much better that that kid realize he can't just take things from people than your daughter feel like she has to just give things to people because they ask for it, even when she doesn't want to. Believe me, you're in the right here, and for goodness sake, don't cry over this. There's nothing to cry about just because you're protecting what's good. Protecting your kid's childhood from an entitled brat and an entitled parent are things to be proud of, not embarrassed for. Post 2. The next post is from Brins89. My family disowned me 15 years ago. Complete no contact. Now, all at once, they want back in my life and are stalking me. I finally confronted them. So I'm a 36-year-old male, and I got into some trouble 15 years ago. I take all the responsibility for it, and to this day, I carry all the shame, guilt, and embarrassment. Also, this might come up, but this is not a cultural or a religious thing. It's just a shame to my family name. When I was 19, my ID was stolen and used in another state, which caused my driver's license to be suspended nationwide. Somehow, any and all notifications from the other state made it to me. I started doing all necessary things to try and fix the problem. However, I had a couple of tickets in my current state that I needed to pay, but couldn't because I needed to pay rent and keep my apartment. At the same time, my full-time job was in trouble and borderline shutting down, so I was doing a lot of freelance work to try and make ends meet. Again, my fault. I knew the company was in trouble, but I was still holding out hope that things would get better. I thought about a few more freelance jobs and I'd be able to pay those tickets. That never happened. Long story short, I was arrested and spent 2 weeks in jail. Not ideal, but I guess in the long run it worked out for the best because it cleared the tickets in my home state. However, my family felt otherwise. I was completely disowned because of it. I lost everything and everyone. The only reason why I still had my apartment was because I had enough saved for rent and freelance work kept coming in. It took another 6 months, but I was finally able to get the other state to release my license. I decided that since my family hated me, I didn't need them. A year later, I changed my last name, phone number, and email. My social media is locked down so tight, you'd think I was hiding national security secrets. I finished college, got settled in my career, and honestly, I'm happier than I've ever been. Now, fast forward to the present. 2 weeks ago, there was a knock at my door. It was my mom and dad. Hadn't spoken to them in 15 years, not one word. The only thing I could get out was, "How'd you find me and what are you doing here?" My mom said $5,000 to a private investigator. Finally, a search of Facebook with just your name and found you, and the private investigator confirmed it was you. I said, "You didn't answer my second question. What are you doing here?" My mom replied, "It's been 15 years. Looking at where you are, it seems you've learned your lesson and you're succeeding. You've missed out on a lot of things." I said, "Yes, I've learned my lesson. One of them is that you can't expect anyone to help you or be understanding, even your family." And yes, I did succeed, and I did it entirely without you. Please leave and never ever come back. I shut the door in their face, locked it, checked the back door, and closed all the curtains. I'm guessing they hung around for another 15 minutes, knocking and demanding to be let in. I went back to bed, turned the fan on high, and went back to sleep. Later, I did some research, and yeah, I've missed out on a lot. I have nieces, nephews, brothers, sister-in-law, but the truth is I don't know any of them. And I don't think I need to. I live a very quiet life. I can count on 2 hands how many friends I actually have. A friend said I may have taken it too far, that I should have given them a chance, and if I didn't like what they had to say, I could have told them to leave. I was hoping that was the end of it, but now they've taken to stalking me. I'll be completely honest. They're harmless, but just a real pain in the butt, and I've been messing with them for fun with the help of a friend. He now calls them fleas and checks on me by asking, "Do you have any fleas today?" If I say yes, it's game on. One night, he came over, and we walked downtown to a really expensive restaurant I knew they'd never step foot in. Another night, we went to the adult store. That was the best one. This past week, my days off aligned, so I had a 5-day stretch, and I decided to go to the city for a few days. I live walking distance from the Amtrak station. They followed me. I kept my AirPads on the whole time. I knew they were trying to talk to me, but I ignored them completely. People on the platform even told me they were speaking to me, and I just said, "Yeah, I know, but I don't want to deal with them." The train came in, I got on, and left. I loved it. Eventually, I had to acknowledge them. They weren't going to go away, so we met at the park across from my apartment. I didn't hold anything back. I told them this was the one and only time I was going to speak to them. I took a page from Matlock and told them I was their judge and their jury. Thank you, Olympia Lawrence. I said that as far as I was concerned, they were guilty of everything, and that all I was doing was hearing what they had to say before I walked away forever. I asked them why, after 15 years, they were demanding to be back in my life. Why did they make the decision to disown me? They said I ruined the family name, and that the shame I brought was unbearable. The only way to fix it back was to get rid of me. Now, recently, my name has come up into conversation again, and the family has grown. Brothers, sisters-in-law, they've been asking questions. Who's Brinley? I have a niece they think I would love and get along with. A nephew who was born last year. Now should be the time to fix things. They said, looking at your apartment and the life you've made, you must have learned your lesson about being a better person and managing your life better. I cut them off. I couldn't stand to hear another word. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told them I did all this by myself. Nobody from that life exists to me anymore. Not one person. Just tell everyone the truth. I was in jail for 2 weeks, and because of that, you disowned me. I've done it all on my own. The only person who was there for me was my cousin Jean, and she's the only cousin by marriage. That's why I took her last name. I told them I still rely on no one. I don't need them. I don't want them in my life. They made their decision, I'm making mine. I told them this would be the last time we speak, that I'm going to see a lawyer to find out if there's anything I can do to keep them away from me, and that if they continue to follow me or show up at my apartment, I'll have them arrested for trespassing. Then, I went home, locked everything down, pulled the curtains, and I've been crying ever since. Think this one through. I understand you're frustrated with your parents. I would be too. It was a really shitty thing for them to cut you off without even hearing your side of the story. But this is your family, and you, as you've stated several times, live an isolated life. You're alone. There's gonna come a point in time, I feel, when you're going to want family. Sure, you can make your own, but there's a primal urge in every human being to be part of something much bigger. A connected family. You don't have to love your mom and dad or reconnect with them. There's so many other people who probably are curious or maybe would even love that you're around. There's connections that you're completely cutting off just because of your mom and dad. Maybe you won't feel this in your 20s, or your 30s, or even your 40s, but when you're really old and there's nothing left in the world, you're going to want to have a family with you. Post 3. The next story is from vague ambiguous name, entitled Mother Tries to Shame Me for Using the Accessible Stall. I have a colostomy bag. So this just happened yesterday and I'm still reeling from it. I, 22 female, have Crohn's disease and wear a colostomy bag. It's not something I usually announce to the world, but obviously, I use accessible restrooms when I need space or when the sink is inside the stall. I was at a Target, just minding my own business, when I felt my bag filling up faster than expected. Crohn's flared up, so I went to the restroom and used the accessible stall because I literally needed the sink to empty and clean it hygienically. While I'm inside, I suddenly hear knocking, then banging. Then I hear a woman's voice. Excuse me, that stall is for people with real disabilities. My son's in a wheelchair. I called out. I'll be out in a minute, her response. I saw you walk in. You don't need the stall, you're just selfish. I was mortified. I rushed to finish and washed everything up and opened the door. There she stood, red-faced, glaring at me with a boy who was in a wheelchair and clearly uncomfortable. I just quietly said, I have a colostomy bag and Crohn's disease. Would you like to see my medical card? She didn't say a word. She just turned beet red and pushed her son in silently. Another woman in the restroom said, she owes you an apology. I just nodded and left. I really hope she learned something that day. Hidden disabilities are still disabilities, and shaming people in front of your child? Yeah, that's not a life lesson she thinks it is. It really isn't. I understand there's an instinct for a lot of women to go mama bear for the sake of their children, but it's really uncalled for, and it clearly shows that she lacks some proper upbringing or maybe was spoiled a bit too much as a kid. Her son's gonna grow up with the same tendencies. Believe me, it's one thing being an asshole, it's one thing being crippled, it's one thing being disabled, but it's another thing entirely being a disabled asshole. At that point, you just lose a sympathy card completely. I'll be honest, with what you've got, you're gonna need that a lot in life. Post 4. The next post is from Happy Llama 78625. Lady gets annoyed when I call my aunt and uncle mom and dad. When I, 18 female, was 3 years old, my father unfortunately died in a car crash. That left my mother alone to take care of me. But after my father's death, she spiraled into depression and became an alcoholic. That addiction eventually led to drug use, and that's when my father's family stepped in. With the help of the courts, they removed me from her custody. From there, I was placed into the care of my aunt and uncle, my dad's sister and her husband. They eventually adopted me after my mother passed away about a year later. So I've spent most of my life with my aunt and uncle, and sometime during middle school, I started calling them mom and dad. It just felt right to me. No one in the family ever had an issue with it, or at least they never said anything about it, until this weekend. From this point forward, I'm going to refer to them as mom and dad, because it's who they are to me. One Memorial Day weekend, we went to visit my grandparents on my mom's side. They've got about 2 acres of land, so it's pretty common for extended families to gather there on holidays and special occasions. This weekend, I met one of my cousin's fiancés for the first time, and I'm not going to lie, she came off a bit obnoxious. She seemed spoiled, like the type of person who would announce a pregnancy at someone else's wedding. On Saturday, me, my mom, dad, cousin, and the fiancé, and my aunt and uncle, my cousin's parents, were all sitting at a table outside chatting. Then, the fiancé looked at me and said, "It's crazy how much you look like your mom. Like, you look nothing like your dad." Then she turned to my dad and added, "You sure she's yours?" The joke flopped hard. My dad and cousin gave her a courtesy chuckle. My mom stepped in and said, "Well, she's my brother's daughter. He, died when she was 3, and her mom couldn't take care of her, so we've been raising her." The fiancé turned to me and said, "Oh, but you called them mom and dad like a few minutes ago." I replied, "Yeah." I got quiet for a second and she asked, "Why?" I was a little confused and getting annoyed, but I answered, because I can. It's what I want to call them." She frowned and said, "But that's weird. They're not your mom and dad, and I don't like it." At that point, I was completely fed up, so I said, "Oh, okay, I'll make sure to write that down in my notes." Silence. Super awkward. I got up and went to hang out with my grandma. I thought the situation was over, but the next morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw my mom, my grandparents, and fiancé all in there. I walked up to my mom, gave her a hug, and said, "Good morning, Mom." The fiancé immediately looked at us and said, "I already told you, I don't like it when you call them that. They're your aunt and uncle, not your parents." That's when my grandpa stepped in and shut it down. He said, "It's none of your business what the girls call them. Mind your own business." After that, she barely spoke to me for the rest of the weekend. But every time we were in the same room, she kept giving me weird looks. Okay, dude, I'm not gonna lie. You kinda sound like an ass. Sorry. She kind of is too. It really is none of her business what you choose to call your mom and your dad, but this could have all been glossed over very quickly if you just explained it to her, you know? Like a simple, my mom wasn't really around for me, so since my grandparents raised me, I essentially call them mom and dad. Stuff like that. And if she doesn't get it, then that's on her. But look, I know this sounds like I'm judging you. It's all a shot in the dark. I mean, for goodness sake, I'm working with nothing but context clues in your perspective here, but even from your own POV, you sound like the kind of person who'd give passive-aggressive snipes because you expect everyone to just get it, and when they don't, you roll your eyes over. I'm not gonna say check yourself because I don't know exactly what's going on here, but I can't make any opinion beyond that. Post 5. The next post is from FunnyTaro8253. My mother wants an ADU for free after selling her own house. I built 850 square feet ADU accessory dwelling unit. It was a full kitchen, 1 bedroom with a king-sized bed, 1.5 bathrooms, a pull-out queen-size sofa in the living room, and a washer-dryer setup in the 1-car garage. One of my sisters keeps joking about turning it into an Airbnb with her collecting management fees, but she's not serious. And my 2 oldest nieces claimed it for themselves when they moved out at 18. But again, they're just joking. Or so I thought. A couple of weeks ago, we had a Mother's Day gathering at my place for the whole family. That's when my mom made a big announcement. She said she and my dad are retiring and selling their fully paid off house, and that I was going to give them full and complete ownership of the ADU for nothing. Oh, and also I would pay 100% of the taxes and utilities because they were saving their money for travel. My mom loves cruises and all-inclusive resorts. My dad, he wants to buy a luxury RV and travel around. Apparently this was their big retirement plan. I was stunned. I told them that this was the first time I'd ever hear anything about that, and there was no way that was going to happen. That's when my mom said, "You promised this to me when you first built the ADU." No, I did not. The truth is, my mom has a habit of getting an idea stuck in her head, then building a whole story around it to confirm it in her own mind. She genuinely believes her own made-up versions of conversations that never happened. As for my dad, he just wants me to go along with it so he can get his RV and hit the road because it's his compromise with my mom and her travel obsession. Okay, buddy, this is really funny to me because I've heard so many stories from Americans where their boomer parents decide, you know what, I'm going to go spend so much of the family money rediscovering myself, or going on some tour around the world, or spending so much money and blah blah blah, and you get zip all from inheritance. And I get this isn't exactly the case, but it does seem like there's a bit of boomeritis going on here. Yeah, this really sucks. You know what, if your parents want to get the ADU, why not ask them for something in return? Cause like, if they're retiring and you're not exactly going to be living off of their work, then they might as well give you something to start off in life. Unless, of course, boomeritis strikes again and they decide you deserve jack all because you've got to pull yourself by your own bootstraps. Fuck. Thanks for watching. If you like that one, there's another story on screen I think you'd enjoy. Bye for now, and see you on the next one.